Right. All right. Peace, everyone. Peace. Thank you guys who are already here. I see you guys in the comment section. Welcome to another live with Hanifa Nayela. I am super, super excited to be here today. I'm super excited to have this conversation. I really want to focus a lot on what are the issues and how we can address them. I could not think of any other couple Mancho is on his way, and we have Nawasha here with us. Um, but I couldn't think of anyone else that I would want to address this particular topic with, other than these two. Um, and so I hope you guys are excited as I am about the topic that we will be touching today. A part of why, actually, let me get into the comments just to see who's here before I get there, because I get real anxious and I'm trying to relax. Who do we have here? I see Arshawn. I see Enya, peace, Enya. I see Ron P, peace. I see E Black TV. Peace to you, Sherelle. Peace, peace. Thank you for coming through on the last minute, sis. um, who else? We have What the Funk. What the fuck? Oh, peace, Rhonda. My poetic sister. Peace, Sister Rhonda. Ma'at speaks. Yes, this is another sister of mine. Peace to you. Rico, you found me. Peace to you, Rico. Thank you guys for the support. I have a little family over here in YouTube land, so I get excited when I see them. Yes, so I know that Moncho is coming, and I
Mhm.
really would prefer. I prefer for you guys to introduce yourselves and tell the people who you are and what you do. I rather that than me do it, right? Because I probably gonna jack a few things up. I feel like no one can tell their story like that person, and so yeah, pretty much. And so I definitely want you guys to introduce yourself to my audience. Let them know who you are. Let them know what you do. How long you guys has been married, how many children, all of that before we jump into it. So if you want to go ahead and just introduce yourself, please do so.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my name is Nawasha. Soon to be sitting next to me is Mancho. And we are authors, we are counselors. We've been married for 15 years. We're the creators of Acoma Day, the cultural alternative to Valentine's Day. And we are the founders of Acoma House Initiative. We do culturally relevant counseling and consulting around all of love relationships. So, friendships, family, intimate partnership, business relationships, community relationships. What we believe ultimately is that all relationships are the success of you being able to manage yourself from a culturally relevant perspective. So that includes like your emotional self, your mental self, your physical self. And the challenges that we have are because we haven't had our rites of passage where we would be prepared for relationships in advance of getting in them. So now we're just feeling our way through. So, in addition to the one to one kind of counseling or consulting, we also created the Black Love School, which is a place for you to get your rite of passage in that kind of group aspect, where we go over a different topic every 2 weeks in a kind of group counseling, but it's more the art and science of Black love culture. And this week, we just started with the culture of love. So every season, we have a different focus. The winter is the culture of love, where we do the higher wisdom and the cultural understanding that is universally Black around the globe. In the spring, we do Spring into Love, which is all of the things on renewal, renewing yourself, renewing your relationship with others. In the summer, it's all about the heat of love, so sex and passion and intimacy. And then we're coming off of the fall, which was all about the harvest of love. You reap what you sow. So your family relationships and preparing to navigate through this holiday time and things like that. So we've been doing this work basically the whole time we've been together. So we are actually Moncho does clinical counseling. I do more relationship and education counseling, but we did grad school together. And that's when we got married, was in the middle of that. And we knew we wanted to go into something together. And this is what it's actually evolved into is culturally relevant relationship education, because that's what we all need, but also bringing back ritual and experiential learning, which is the way of our ancestors. But you're still on mute. Which, thank you for muting yourself.
Thank you. I have one thing to ask of you. There's like a but like a I don't know vibration when you speak into the mic.
Oh, is it? I wonder what that could be.
I'm not sure what it is, but and maybe I haven't seen anyone said anything about it, so maybe it's just me.
I'm
Um,
not sure.
I'm not sure either. Hey, 100 watts. Thank you for passing through as usual. I appreciate you guys. You guys make me smile. Who do we have here?
Hey, hey, hey. I just made it in.
Just made it in. Hey, Mancha, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm flustered. I'm running around with the baby. I had a couple of things going on, so um, I'm here now, I think.
Okay. Okay. Well, we're grateful that you're here.
Yeah, we trying. I'm still technical difficulties. I'm still trying to get some things together here.
They just said, Nawasha, they just said it's just on my end. They don't hear it.
Oh, okay,
Okay.
good. Because I was
Yes.
just trying to figure it out.
Someone in the comments ask if you guys do any family relationship counseling, like siblings or parent, children.
Yes, we're actually clinical therapists, both of us, and we do everything. My background is in Micah and Cayman, mentally ill and chemically abusive. Um, but I've spent like 25 plus years working with incarcerated adults and adjudicated youth. So my background is in mental health, addiction, incarceration, um, a multitude of psychoses. Um, and, I've been working with alternative school children. So, like 16 to 24-year-old students who are who didn't matriculate the traditional way in high school, and so they're looking to receive their high school diploma or equivalency. So, like I that was my background for many years, still is. I have clients that range from schizophrenic um, to depression, et cetera, et cetera. Um, Nawasha is also a therapist, but she's also a professor, and so she is more on the educational side, but she really deals with social leadership. She deals with women empowerment, and she really, as a therapist, she hasn't really been on the side of the tracks that I've been on, because I kind of rocked with everybody who was like murderers, rapists, pedophiles, child, like I've worked with that population. But she's more like educational psychology and that kind of thing. But then we came together and brought our cultural initiation, which we both have been cultural initiates together for about 22, going on 22 years, just short of 22 years, probably like in March. And but individually, I think we have, a combined over 40 years, because I really started like at 14 years old with my family, going through initiations and then beginning to divest from some of the things that was happening in America. Meanwhile, I'm 7 years older than Nawasha. Meanwhile, Nawasha was traveling and living around the world, and actually dealing with Black people throughout the diaspora. And so when we came together, we really combined our cultural and clinical background, and we focused it on the family. So a lot of people know us from family therapy, or more specifically for as couples counselors, but we both are therapists. So we deal with a lot of things. I think, I let Nawasha say what she deals with. I think I'm more interested and open to dealing with everything than she is as a therapist. I think she's more of a professor now and more of a just a couples counselor and relationship counselor. But you could say, what are you?
I have a scratchy throat.
Okay. That's why I bought you a little ginger right there.
No, I'm open to dealing with a lot, but my preference is really for someone who is a believer in indigenous medicine already. So someone who really is interested in the blackety black stuff. So someone who believes in, returning to our cultural norms in order for us to move into the present. So I do energy medicine, I've studied the chakra system. So I'm definitely a person who likes to blend some of the unseen modalities when it comes to healing with some of the more standard things that we've kind of come to get through our formal education and through counseling. So I'm one of those fusion type of people, but I also believe in moving towards goals. Even if you're not sure what the goal is, but moving to what you want in your heart rather than just processing old traumas and processing old pains. I'm definitely somebody who's counsels based on strengths because I believe that a fundamental principle in indigenous culture is that everyone has a purpose, everyone has gifts, and I definitely believe that they're not honored as much in the culture that we're in globally right now around the world, not just American culture. But so I'm a person who believes in that principle of returning to your gifts in order to achieve your goals.
Okay, so thank you for both of you guys, because that was a question from Rico, and I think that should have addressed it as well. I'm going to go ahead and jump right into my questions. I have about 10 to 11 of them. We may or may not get to all of them, but I'm definitely getting to the meaty stuff first, okay? But I'm going to go ahead and start off with the first question, right? In your work, the work that you guys do, what has been your observation as to why our relationships are where they are? Now, let me stop right there before I move on. The reason for me doing this particular show is I am new to the YouTube space, right? I haven't even been here a good full 2 months yet. And one of the things I recognize immediately coming from outside of my so-called bubble is this really huge gap between black men and black women, and almost like a vitriolic um thing that they have towards each other, this disdain, this hate. And I'm like, oh my God, what is happening? And so I'm watching it from both sides. Of course, there's the side that some may say is misogynistic, and then some may say there's misandry on the other side. They're just two extremes. So I wanted to talk about this particular topic with a more balanced approach, focusing on, okay, what are the issues that's causing this gap? And then what do we need to do to sort of close it a bit? So I just kind of wanted to give some background. So in your work, what has been your observation as to why our relationships are where they are? Are we in trouble, or are things getting better?
Oh, we're absolutely in trouble. We are approaching 8 out of 10 Black families are raising children in unmated homes, and our ability to connect and mate, which is a very natural and innate thing, um, is like it's so difficult to us. Now, one of the things is that as a people, we don't understand this word called culture. We don't understand what it is. We think that it's food and clothing and language, but those are vestiges of culture. Culture is a value system, a group value system, um, uh, like a tapestry of interdependent core beliefs that are transmitted through our thought, speech, and action, right? So what Black people don't understand is that there is, like systems theory, there is a massive system that is its survival is based on keeping Black men and women apart. The functions of that survival are in the very places that we find ourselves talking the most about relationships: YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, et cetera, et cetera. So the very places we're going to are the very systemic they're the actual arms that are trying to keep us separated. And so the vitriol that you see is very, very profound. Now, what is new in the last 5 to 10 years is Black men have felt left out of the conversation of relationship. Their perspective has not been respected. They've been the women's lib movement used Black women to beat up Black men for the last 40 years. So now what is happening is there is a psycho ass misogyny group of men, Kevin Samuels and the likes, that are hell bent on getting revenge. And so they are talking like they hate Black women, under the guise of saying what they're saying is actually designed to help Black women. And I would agree that there is some truth in some of the things that they say, but from a therapeutic standpoint, I would absolutely say that there is animus and there is hatred toward the feminine principle. I find it interesting as a married person, a person who's been happily married to my best friend for 21 years, that most of the people talking are not married. Kevin Samuels and many others, so many that are striving to find um, a holy matrimony and a mate, because I believe their core beliefs is that it would naturally have happened at a certain age or whatever. They're not looking to themselves in terms of having a purpose, having a life purpose, having a cultural center, but more importantly, having a skill set around relationships. So when we look at the fray of people that's out here, it just becomes easy for men and women to say everybody crazy as hell out here, and people don't know what they want, and they playing around, and et cetera, et cetera. But the reality is we are being victimized so subtly that we don't even see. I would challenge Black people this: show me another group of people that are at odds with their women and men like Black people. And specifically Black Americans. I mean, we work with Black people all throughout the diaspora. We got clients in 11 countries right now. Um, I Black people in the Western world are the most unmated human beings on earth. And I don't know if we really realize that in a global schematic. Like I don't know that we see that. We just, who talking about relationships? Let's go in there and argue, or let's advance our point. But I don't think that we see as a culture. We absolutely, like, our survival is us not surviving is imminent if we don't get some things fixed.
So
So
I have a
yeah.
question, Moncho, because what you're speaking to, because someone asked the question, and I think that you sort of said Western people, or Black people in the West. So Rico had the question. I didn't want you to get too far away from it. He's saying, so why are those mechanics working against the Black community exclusively and not other communities as well?
Well,
Why is it that other communities see the value in them being together versus? Go ahead.
I don't know if he means other Black communities around the world, or
No, you mean
does he
other
mean,
communities in general?
yeah, because the system that is working against us is the global system of racism, white supremacy, and we are the biggest threat to that system. So we are the number one enemy of that system, and so us being disjointed is the system's primary issue. So um, Black people have the genetic material to eliminate everybody else on earth. So it is imperative for this system to operate that you keep Black people from being together and reproducing Black people. And this is the basic mechanics of the system of racism, white supremacy. And a lot of people don't understand that. They don't understand that that is what's operating, in, behind what is happening. They just think, we ride trends because we're living in defense. So whatever comes out, we ride it. People call us all the time. Y'all got to get on a new. We got to get on a new platform and a new. And we like, no, we don't. Like, we on YouTube. We've been on YouTube for years. We don't
Right.
need YouTube. You know what I mean? Because we're so busy with clients and we're so busy with the Black Love School and the various different things that we do that we don't have time to really be trendy per se. We're really trying to help people who really want to be to build family and nationhood, but we're lost as a group. And so we always grab for straws and we're looking for direction from a multitude of people. Like one of the things I say about all of these people talking about relationships, I think it's amazing that most of them are not in relationships. So we never go to people who don't have money about money. We never go to people who don't have fitness about fitness. But see, everybody's in relationships or everybody wants one. So everybody feels qualified to espouse their talking point and to kind of like promote it. And then if you get some followers and you make some money, then nobody can tell you nothing now. But I'm saying, as a married person who's been married for 21 years, 6 children, like living this life, doing this work just as a married couple. I'm not even talking about any kind of therapy or counseling or coaching or any of that, but just being a married couple. I'm always happy to see and looking to connect with other people like us around the world. So why is it that so many people that are talking are not actually successful at the thing that we're talking about? How is that like possible?
Uh-oh.
That's really, really interesting, and it bespeaks to the point that we're really collectively lost, and we would rather just align with somebody who says what we like than actually somebody who can produce what we want. And that's what you have in Kevin Samuels. And no disrespect to Kevin Samuels, like, I'm not beating up on him. That's my brother. I don't like a lot of stuff he says. I don't agree with him on a lot of things, but a lot of things he says is, you know, he has some truth into some of the stuff that he's saying, but the way he's presenting it and certain things that he's leaving out
Right.
is actually detrimental to us as a group. And we have a multitude of men following him, and he ain't even in a relationship. So I always say this: you end up where the person who's leading you is at. Is that
Woo!
where you want to be? Do you want to be 52 years old without? I mean, he's good looking, he's articulate, but he's talking about relationships every day, and he don't have one. That's where you want to be at.
So you bring up a Nwasha. I think you was trying to say something just now.
The watch
I
is
was gonna
coughing.
say, yes,
Oh, okay.
and I'm like I said, I had a little bit of a scratchy throat, and now it's like exploding.
Okay.
But I was gonna say he doesn't necessarily even talk about relationships every day. He tends to talk about Black women every day.
Right.
So the challenge that we have is that the system of racism and white supremacy, it does also affect other people. It affects Latinos. It affects Asian people. It affects the entire world because it's a system that's guiding all of our areas of people activity. So when
Right.
you have a system like that, what happens is there's going to be a scale. It's like the North Pole and the South Pole. Along that pole, Black people are suffering the most, right? But everyone suffers from a system that's out of balance like
Yeah,
that
even white
and
people.
out of harmony. So even white people, relationships are not lasting. There's still a high divorce rate. There's still a lot of challenges and mistrust and, broken families down the spectrum to, where we have some of the so-called, if you're looking at statistics, we have some of the worst statistics for staying together, guiding our families, being there for our children. But any system that's out of alignment is going to affect everyone. This is what consciousness actually is from an indigenous Black perspective. The consciousness that gets to lead on the planet
Okay.
affects everyone. It affects the animals. It affects the
Absolutely.
air, the
The
water.
plants,
Right.
So
literally.
it's gonna affect every single person. It's just that people tend to look for solutions based on what their personal interest is. So, white people look for solutions for white people primarily and their immediate relationships. Latino family is going to look for the solutions that solve their challenges, right?
Right.
First. And what we have is a lot of times we're looking at ourselves last. And even when we
Yes.
look at ourselves and we try to evaluate our problems, we look through the lens of other people in order to
Absolutely.
solve our problems. So
Absolutely.
the system is affecting everyone. It's just that everyone is looking for solutions in different ways. We
Mhm.
have to look for solutions that speak to things that are natural to us. And fortunately for Black people, we have the most range of solution because we have the most range of access to
Mhm.
what is seen and unseen. We have the most felt emotions and the most, we just have the full spectrum being the parent people of humanity and having melanin and so many different things that we have a greater level of access to. It's not just those things. Those things are symbolic of so a greater spectrum of color, a greater spectrum of melanin, a greater spectrum of sound,
A
all
longer
of those
history.
things that happen that we are inheriting. We also inherit a greater spectrum of solution, but we don't know that because we don't study things from our perspective.
From our perspective. That's such a great point, Nwasha. I'm glad that you touched on that. I'm going to move on to the next question because there's been a lot of conversation around Black women just being too masculine, and almost as if Black women would just rest in their femininity, this is going to solve all of the problems in our community. So my question to you guys, have Black women become too masculine and Black men too feminine? And how does that affect how we do relationship with each other?
Yes, I'm going to say yes.
Yes to both. Men have become okay. Go ahead.
I'm going to say yes. It's much like what I was just saying, the North Pole and the South Pole. We have a pole of humanity
Mhm.
for men and women, right? So we have a pole of being born in the masculine and the feminine. In the feminine, there's a range of femininity. So femininity doesn't look one way. In the masculine, there's a range of masculinity. But from an indigenous cultural perspective, again, the reason why you are born as a woman, it comes with certain things. So it's not just that you're going to get your menstrual cycle, perhaps, and you're going to grow breasts. Those are all a physical manifestation of a spiritual and emotional understanding.
Mhm.
A mental reality is what has you have ovaries,
Mhm.
right? Or what has you have breasts or a womb versus testes
Mhm.
and a penis, right? So we sometimes are so stuck on just the physical, like Mansha was saying about culture. We think of culture as food and the clothes that I wear and the language that I speak, when actually culture is your value system that creates the food and creates the language and creates, what you're going to say, even when you introduce each other and how you come together. So the masculine and the feminine is the way that we are manifesting as human beings.
Mhm.
When you put something out of balance again, just like we were saying about the system of racism, white supremacy, you're going to throw off the planet. So, like Masha was saying, that's going to be the plants, that's going to be overproducing. So, cutting down too many trees, which throws off one ecosystem. That the same way that that happens in our the way
Social
that we would
systems.
like to share ourselves within the social system. So what happens when you have a intentional kind of overt system of racism, white supremacy, where you are taking men, killing men, incarcerating men. When men are removed, women naturally have to do some of the things that men would do, which would be lead, which would be, earn in different ways, which would be take control. There
Protect.
are some things
Protect. Yeah.
that
Mhm.
women do that are more fluid naturally.
Mhm.
Even when we're working, even when we're running businesses, when men and women are both in position, femininity has certain traits, which
Yeah.
are like cyclical thought, cycles, fluidity,
Abstract.
abstract ideas, nurturing, seed understanding, right? Men have certain traits which tend to be linear, which tend to be
Cognitive.
organized, which tend to be
Sequential.
rational, right?
Hmm.
Neither one of those things are better than the other. They are complementary things. What happens when one is out of whack is that the other one wants to compensate for that experience. And
Yeah.
this is literal in a relationship and literal on the planet again, because these things are really, ideas that seem like they're abstract actually have a physical manifestation. So men are sometimes not in the position to protect us, which means if you feel you have to protect yourself, you're looking to a man saying, what is it that you're actually going to do? If you're not going to do what I think you're going to do, or what I think other men are doing for their women, and I have to do that, then I don't want to hear certain things from you. So that's an example of, you can't necessarily flex all of your masculinity this way if you can't also do this, this, and this, right? Now, I would say for men, a lot of times men are in a more feminine aspect because they also can't lead or also can't control, because the white male is seen as the man. Like, we even make jokes about it, like the man is doing
That's
this,
where
the man's doing
the
that.
terminology comes from.
I thought that that was a really funny joke in Undercover Brother when they're like, the man this, the man that. We're saying the man is going to be the white man, essentially, under this dynamic. So what happens is you have to play another position. Now, when women are also leading households that boys are in, there's just going to be an affinity towards some of the things that are feminine. It would be like if a girl or girls were raised in male led households a lot,
Hmm.
right? We
Yeah.
all know, and we have friends. I have friends. I'm sure some in the audience might, where you're like, yeah, I grew up with my grandfather, my uncles, my dad. The girl who does that, even coming into her femininity, has some traits that she has developed, which is a skill set, but it's from her desire to thrive in that environment. Men can develop a skill set from being in a female led environment, but without a balance into that, it comes off as being too feminine, which means they're in a passive role many times, waiting for women to take the lead, waiting for women to do things, waiting for kind of like an additional mother instead of a mate or a partner.
And I
Okay.
think that when we use the word "to," what you have to always understand from a psychology perspective, anytime somebody uses the word "to," to, it's a comparative word. So
Okay.
when you say you being too feminine, or you being too talkative, or you being too mean, it's compared to a norm. I think that Black people are not understanding that, we're emotionally immature. So when you don't have your culture, you become emotionally immature.
Mm.
Talk to people from around the world and you ask them about how do they deal with courting, mating, dating, child rearing, love, sex, intimacy, divorce, whatever. They will say, as we talk to these people all around the world, they say, well, in my culture, blah, 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 because they understand that it's culture that informs these things.
Mm.
For us, we have been traumatized and we've been victimized by a thought system that produces an individualized thought. So we think that in every single lifetime we're going to make up new rules. So for me, that don't work for me, and I'm not going to. It's I. We have this individual I ideology
Okay.
when we're throwing this mud, because like the way we do it in social way, we throwing mud at each other. Women being too masculine,
Mm-hmm.
brothers being men are being too feminine.
Mm-hmm.
This is the mud that we're throwing back and forth, but we're making a comparison to an idea that we have. What is that idea? That idea is our natural order, and even though we're far disconnected from it, innately we're still connected to it. So we have an idea of womanhood as men, and we have an idea of manhood as women. I often say to clients and people that I talk to, as men, we can't define womanhood, but we can say what we accept.
Yes.
We're totally unqualified to define what womanhood is because we're not women. Similarly, women can't really define manhood, but they can say what they will accept. And I always say to people like, yo, what is the model of manhood that you're even talking about? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's how I start the conversation just when I'm talking to men. Because if you're talking about this cracker, you crazy. You're going to give me a value system that says all is fair and love and war and a whole bunch of psycho shit that you can't even really manifest, but you believe it because you listen to them all the time, and,
Yeah.
and you watch them exert a power in the world that you falsely believe is all theirs. So when you're talking metaphysically and when you're talking about the origins of these people, the play was already written that they were placed in. So there's some elements of their success that have nothing to do with them. And we don't understand this as black people.
So I'm gonna stop. Let me interject right there.
Yes,
Okay. So you said a whole lot. And
yes,
I almost was like about to apply because I have seen conversations happen around men actually attempting to define womanhood. And then I've
yes,
seen the converse and I'm just like, no, that's not how we do that. That's like
yes.
you cannot define womanhood and I cannot define manhood. It's the same thing that I feel where men are acting a certain way. I literally feel men need to address men when men are acting out of order. And I think that women need to address women when women are acting out of order because you get to define when you are stepping outside the bounds of so-called like womanhood or manhood. Those people, those individual men and women get to define that. I don't get to tell a man this is how, and you don't get to tell a woman. You can say this is what I would accept, this is what I won't accept. But generally speaking, I see men doing this all the time and it drives me crazy. So I'm
Well,
glad
you're going
you
to
made
see
that.
more of it because the reason you're seeing it, this is what you have to contextualize. The reason you're seeing it is because for 40 years, for about 40, 50 years, black women have been seduced by the white woman. So the white man in his system crippled the black man and took him out of the home. And then the white woman came in and said, "Hey, sis, let we are together. Let me empower you." And so part of that seduction was while she was talking trash to the black woman about white men, she was still married. She was
Mm,
still dealing with white men, and she was still subservient to the power structure of white men.
mm,
But she made the black woman believe that it's men, and men surely got issues, but she made them believe that specifically your man is not good for you. So now I don't begrudge the black woman for her victimization. Black men had a total different victimization, but ultimately it's our collective victimization. If you in any the way that you can check it is look at our children. They have lost tremendously because the ideas that their mothers believe and the ideas that their fathers believe don't serve them as a group. It attempts to serve the mom and dad as an individual, but it doesn't work because it is not their idea. Now, whether black women understand this or not, there is a group of white men that are now putting money and energy behind black men saying, look at this trick. Look at her. She is raggedy. And she is, man, you can't, nobody wants to deal with the black woman.
mm,
Nobody.
mm,
And so now he's being seduced. And a lot of them are getting offered money. A lot of them are getting political support. If you will come out and say negative stuff about black women, you will get paid. So we got a couple of things.
And that's been
You could
happening
say,
for decades.
yeah, you could say something about black women, you can say something about black men, or you can say that the model that we should be aspiring to is the psycho LBGTQP
mhm.
NMNP group. And if you say that, we will support you, you will get followers, you will get money, you will get, and so now many of us are hurt. Now I'm talking about the men. Many
Yes.
of us have not had the um opportunity or the voice to express this hurt. Now we just can't wait. We can't wait to get
Mm,
this platform. And now we're going to tell you how raggedy you are and how horrible you've been as a single mother And we're not talking about how you became a single mother, which is obvious. And we could clearly see that that's the problem, because it takes a unified coalition to raise a child, and it takes a whole community, not just two parents. But we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about, damn, how the man is not in the house. You suck. And now
Mhm.
let me go on about that for the next 20 years. If we don't begin to understand who is really behind this conversation, we're going to get now 40 years of the men trampling the women, and I don't think that we will survive that.
No, no, I'm glad that you mentioned that. I'm gonna move on to I actually don't see how. And I do agree with you, because when I do listen to certain conversations, some people call it the red pill, some people say the manosphere. I know they're two
Yeah,
separate things, but when I do listen to some of the conversations, I do hear a lot of hurt and I do hear a lot of pain. And I think that most women, when they listen to it, because we tend to like often lead with emotion, we get so offended that we're not really hearing what's not being said oftentimes. And like you said, the last 40 years, black women have been able to go at black men, and actually have been incentivized, right? They've been fed, and applauded because of it. And now we're seeing the opposite happen, where the men are coming after, and I just don't know how we're going to survive that. My
yeah,
next Yeah, my
Well,
next question. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, because the idea would be for us to become aware of what has happened and what's happening. I saw a
yeah,
comment that was talking about women outnumbering men,
yeah. That's a myth. That's a myth.
but that some of those things are again like the effects of racism, white supremacy. So when you're talking about men, girls and boys are still born at the same rate because of, again, the indigenous understanding of the science of soulmating. There aren't more girls born than there are boys. But what happens is, through life, in a system that is out of balance, boys are attacked more than girls in different ways.
Yes,
So
they
they
are.
tend to have challenges younger. So
Mhm.
by the time boys and girls become adults at 18, 19, 20, you can say, yes, maybe there's a number where there are more women in the world than men, but that's because men are going to war, men are being incarcerated, men are being killed, right? So that's why we're thrown off. So a lot of times we have to understand, we have to go to root causes and really come to a greater sense of awareness about what's actually happening,
Mhm.
instead of being so reactive. And that's whether that's in the individual relationship, like you said, emotions are important because they're teaching you something, they're telling you something, but leading with them all of the time without also leading with your head is a challenge. Just like if you were attempting to detach from all emotion and fool yourself and lie to yourself that you're only making logical decisions, it doesn't exist. We black people, all human beings, have seven senses, but again, black people have that at the greatest range. So your seven senses include your thoughts and your emotion,
Mhm.
with your sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. There
Mhm.
is no person on the planet making solely logical decisions that only have to do with thought. Just like there's no person on the planet who's only leading or only too much in their emotions. The emotions come from certain thoughts, and the thoughts are going to have emotions in them. And what
Right,
we have to
Right.
be able to say is, what happened when women were incentivized? That same thing is going to happen, or worse, when men get incentivized, and we're
right.
still not going to be in a better
And I
situation.
think it's potentially worse because men, men all the time talk this, the rate of men and women born. Is total fallacy. If you understand the symbol of the akoma, is really where the teaching that a man and a woman comes from each other's rib. It is a literal symbol. It is a literal symbol. So if you exist, your soulmate is the complement gender somewhere in the world. So there is no such thing as men being born more than women. But literally, if you look at birth rates around the world, especially for the 1 billion, 8 million black people, no one could say that women outnumber
But
men.
it's the
And
racism
they
and
never
the white
have, and
supremacy.
they never will, because if a child exists, the complement child to that child exists somewhere. Even
Mhm.
if they were aborted in the womb or something like that, They were separated from oneness and implanted in the womb of a woman one place, and then the womb of another woman some other place. This is high African science that a lot of people don't even know about, but it's encoded in things like Jack and Jill and Hansel and Gretel that we get.
Mhm.
We don't understand the deeper symbolic meaning of what these things are about. Why? Because we're getting our spiritual lessons from someone else's what? Culture.
Culture.
And
Yeah.
so we're lost to something that is like really a foundational understanding that we're supposed to have. So I mean, you know, I'm just saying that point because
Well, he put
again,
in the comments that he's
again,
really talking about the effects of the
right,
racism, white supremacy, and those are things again like how can we support families to prevent homicides? How can we support families to prevent incarceration so that the numbers that actually exist are more workable?
right,
Those are where we have so rather than prepare your daughter for something that seems like it's inevitable that there will be no men, it's better to actually help raise sons so that they make the best decisions, they avoid incarceration, they avoid killing, they avoid being killed themselves. And this because a lot of murders that happen are you don't know how to deal with conflict. So it's
Yes.
better to say rather than raise my child with a lack mentality that there are no men for you because you're a beautiful daughter, I'm going to actually go out and help my nephews, help my neighborhood sons, help my own sons, help my cousins who are boys understand how to resolve conflicts, understand how to communicate,
right,
understand how to prepare, understand that they're living in a system of racism, white supremacy that's trying to trip them up. So then they can be with the girls who they are meant to be their soulmates. But a lot of times, this is another way that sometimes because we are afraid we are thinking of the worst case scenario and trying
Yeah.
to buffer ourselves against the worst case scenario. But
Mhm.
this is where it's really important for Black people to understand that we have the greatest spectrum of solution. So you don't have to be reactive to something that seems as though it's inevitable when that was part of a system. You can tap into another system that is going to actually be the counter and helping end the system of racism, white supremacy. We don't want to
absolutely.
find better ways to deal with racism.
We want to
We
end
want
it.
to get rid of
Yes,
racism.
yes, yes,
Yeah, so that's a good point. We don't want to find ways to deal with it. We want to
right.
eradicate it. Okay. So I'm going to move on to the next question
Yes,
because I'm going
yes.
to go
Go
through
ahead.
them.
Go ahead.
Um,
We can
all
speed
right.
up
So
the
this
pace. We're gonna
question
make sure
here,
we keep the answer shorter.
okay, this question here, it came up. Okay, so it has integration and the opportunities afforded to Black women weaken our need for each other. And the reason why that question came about is, I was having a conversation and it was around the fact that, you know, at a different time, because you hear people bring this up a lot. You guys need to go back being like your grandparents and your great grandparents. You know, they knew their place, and since women entered into the workforce and so forth during integration, right? I feel like Black people work together a little better, right? A little better. um but my question is it that we don't need each other as much anymore? When people say we
No,
don't need
no,
each other
no.
as much, go ahead.
That's. I don't think that's what it is. But I
Okay.
think your question speaks to what it is. So,
Okay.
all intelligent Black people around the world should be able to see that integration has been horrible for Black
Mhm.
people because we have never shared power. So integration is a refinement word for slavery. That's all it is.
Mhm.
So now, if you would replace the word integration with slavery, you would ask, has slavery weakened our people? Absolutely, 100%.
Mhm.
The four stages of racism, white supremacy is establishment, um, or setup, maintenance, or upkeep, growth or expansion. And then number four, the most insidious one, is refinement. And refinement is the stage of um, covert evolution. So it is continuously refining in a way that in one generation it may be weaponizing hip hop music against a people. In another generation, it was crack. In another generation, it was actually voters' rights bills. In another
Mhm.
generation, it was you can start your own business from a government loan that you can't pay back. In another generation, it was something else, something else, something else. In one particular generation, it was integration. When we were excluded, and keep in mind, Black people have always chose not to be with white people, but when we were defeated in this stage of the war that we're in, we acquiesced to something that we never chose. We never wanted to be around these people, right? Historically, no one can deny that. We resisted tremendously. And every time we could, we uprose and tried to get what? Free. I'm a
Mhm.
therapist. I use the DSM. I got it on the shelf over there. One of the first clinical psychoses that was listed. Many therapists don't know, Black therapists who go to school and don't have cultural training. They got these degrees, these advanced degrees that me and Nawasha got, and they don't mean jack. You can't help your people because you don't have a cultural reference. And that doesn't mean that you just chocolate cover white psychology where you making Santa Claus Black. It means that you have a paradigm that doesn't come from white folks at all. But
Mm.
in that DSM book said one of the earliest
It was a theory,
psychosis
right?
was drapetomania, which was anybody who wanted to leave enslavement was
What was mentally ill.
was mentally ill. So
Not the
now,
people who are enslaving are
not the
mentally
people
ill.
who there isn't a classification for the racism and white supremacy and the things that they've done, but there's all kinds of classifications for the reactions. And that's showing you that this is a cultural book, even though it's masquerading as some scientific clinical book. It's a cultural book because the value system of white people are the pinnacle of thought in that book. So now, when you ask, does integration help us? Integration is the way that you were able to destroy the Black family. So now, has destroying the Black family helped us? Absolutely not. We're so disconnected from our history that we don't understand the place that we're from is responsible still today for 80% of all the resources that are going on in the world. Now, imagine a Black world where Black people controlled 80%, which would be in alignment and naturally right around the coltan that's running all of this technology, and all of this stuff that's happening is either coming from the Congo or various different places on the continent. If we controlled all of that, is there a Black person around here who thinks we would be worse off if we were doing that? When we entered into so-called community with white folks, we took on their value systems. That's why
Yeah.
we speak their language right now. There's
Yes.
no white people around here, but we only talking their language. We can't even talk to each other in our own language. So when you compare or juxtapose our wins versus our losses, that question is like, you know, that's like saying, was slavery good for us or was it bad for us?
But
And
you
you
know,
know,
people
there
are
are
having those
some
conversations
people
too.
who walk around the world saying slavery was really good for us. It saved us.
Right.
You know, this is how psycho we are. You know,
Yeah.
so you know,
I think that we have to look at what does like something like resegregation, what does that actually mean? If you think that resegregation is just you doing for yourself, then of course that would be the solution. But I think sometimes we can't imagine what it would be like to really be segregated because one of the challenges that we have to understand is all the areas of people activity. So what Neely Fuller and Dr. Francis Cress Welsing offered us was that there are, it's economics, education, entertainment, food, fashion, labor law, religion, sex, politics, war. When you are saying to yourself that you understand this is how people relate to each other, if we were segregated, what we had felt in segregation was that we had less than white people. So we had a worse school system. We had less teachers. We had no school books. We still have very much like that right now, even with integration. Our Black schools in urban areas tend to have no computers, no toilet tissue sometimes, no toilet seats, right? So what people understand about segregation is that we were at a weaker, lesser than state. But the challenge is that if we can imagine that we are segregated to actually learn our true history, not something that's diluted and comfortable for white people that are sitting next to us in class, but we could actually learn about ourselves from a teacher who understands that and embodies that and who could write the book and all of those types of things, we would be better off segregated. Because if we went to hospitals where people understood that, yes, Black people feel pain, they're not lying when they're saying that they feel that they're losing their child, that they feel that they're that they feel something in their mind, like, oh no, it's just a headache. If we were going to places where people understood us because they were us, we would be better off in every single category. But what we think of sometimes with segregation is that they're going to hoard things away from us. The truth is, if we had the capability to have access to what Black people create, right? So now this is on every continent.
Right.
If we were connected true Pan-Africanism and said, I'm doing this business over here with this business over here in the Congo, who's also doing business with somebody in New Zealand, who's also doing business with Black people in Europe, and we can have that exchange going between us in forms of segregation in protected spaces where even if we have police, they are police who are invested in patrolling and helping the community, not having a interest for racism, white supremacy. So sometimes what happens is people say things like, oh, well, there's police corruption in Africa too, and they're Black. But
Mm-hmm.
the interest that's always above the people is still racism, white supremacy. The
Right.
interest that people have allegiance to is still money or hoarding or wealth, which are the value system of racism, white supremacy. So when we
Absolutely.
say separation, segregation means that you're separated, right? Separation, but from a perspective where your value system is for the greater good of Black people, then how could that not be a good thing? In our true history, even in the last few thousand years, Black people have been righteous even to white people, right? So this has never happened the other way around.
Yeah.
Black people said, oh, you're suffering, you're dying, you're starving, you're freezing, you don't understand how to bathe or how to do certain things. And I'm talking about thousands of years, right? We have been saying that, hey, what's good for us with the most righteous living is also going to be good for you. Now, the reverse has not happened, where white people have said, hey, I'm in control. And because I'm in control, the planet is better. What's good for me is also good for you. That is not the same philosophy. So if we had control, if we had the upper hand, we would naturally, because we don't believe in hoarding. Naturally, we don't believe in hoarding. Naturally, we believe in eternity because we have the longest history. So we don't have the reason to hoard trees, to hoard food, to hoard
Mm-hmm.
if
Mm-hmm.
we were in the lead, segregated, the ripple effect in that spectrum again would automatically uplift every other people on the planet while they still exist.
And I think that if you are a student of history, you can see, this is the challenge. We're striving to find solutions from trauma-based. It's so many therapists that I hear quote this ridiculous trauma-informed care and all of this nonsense that white people made up. Your model can't come from that. So even when we conceive, when we do problem conception, we do it from as if this is the only thing that happened. When people ask, are Black people better off segregated? Look at our history. The answer is unequivocally yes.
Yeah.
Like it's not even. It's like saying, Is it better for you to take showers or not? Like, yeah.
So I have a question because um Nwasha touched on this, the conflict resolution piece, and I've seen this. Like when our people disagree, the way that we talk to each other, the way that we conduct ourselves when we just have different opinions, like at least from my observation, what I've been seeing, I'm just like, how do we go from 0 to 1,000 so easily with each other? So I do believe the conflict resolution, specifically with our boys who then become our men, we could do a better job as far within the families and working on that. But what came to my mind, and I wanted you to touch on this because the last time I spoke with you, you mentioned that we don't even know how to break up. So,
Yeah,
what do you mean when you say we don't even know how to break up? Please, I beg you,
yeah.
expound on it.
I mean, so let me just say, as a therapist, and we're really about a couple of things.
Okay.
One, we're about trauma healing because we're all traumatized,
Mhm.
right? When we think, speak, and act, we speak, we think, speak, and act from trauma, right? Number two, we're about relationship education because as therapists, we understand that Black people do not understand there is a big difference between healing trauma and becoming prepared for a relationship. Most people believe if they heal their trauma, then they're ready to be in a relationship. But relationship requires a couple of things. And the third thing we talk about is cultural initiation. But let me go back to the second thing, which is relationship education, which speaks to your point.
Mhm.
So, one of the pillars of relationship education is conflict resolution. In fact, along with communication, I think that it's one of the most important things because we say, as a married couple and as therapists, the average couple has 1 to 3 conflicts a week, but above average couple. Now, when I'm saying a conflict, I'm not talking about something that's going to kill each other. I'm just
Right.
talking about men and women have totally different processing styles. And then you have two personalities like Mancho and Nawasha, right?
Mhm.
So I'm Mancho with my life, but I am a man. She's Nawasha with her life, and she is a woman. So there is the woman and man going on, but then there's also the Mancho and Nawasha going on. We don't understand this. So now psycho couples have, which is the majority of us, have about 5 to 7 conflicts a week. And then about once a season, they have a conflict that if they don't have good conflict resolution skills, they will destroy their relationship. Now, when we break up, here we are, a traumatized people that is holding tremendous pain, and we're only averting the pain because the other person causes us some measure of pleasure. And we don't want to lose that pleasure that they provide to us. When we decide that that relationship is over and now you are not causing me the pleasure that I'm looking for from you, I will unload about 30 years of anguish on you. Shit that happened to me when I was molested at 4 years old, and my mother, my father, my uncle, my growing up, my neighborhood, you about to get all of that because now I'm going to unleash all this hurt that I've had in my life on you. And so when we break up, we tend to do this, and the culture that we live in supports this. So you have a bully culture, you have a culture that says, if you got it, flaunt it. If somebody play you, kick their ass. We go to movies and spend millions of dollars watching people kill people and jump and cheer, and then say, "Why is everybody so violent?" I mean, this is the cultural value system that we are participating in. And so when the intimate relationship, a person like, oh, we were so in love and you loved me. Well, really, I didn't even really love you. What I did was use you to placate my own sense of loneliness and other things. Now that that's not working so well, I'm going to let your ass have it. And I'm going to let you have it in grade A fashion. And so now this becomes the actual laser type vitriol that we can unload on a person and really damage them now for another 5 to 10 years. And so it's a perpetual psychosis going on. And this is why, with all the therapeutic background and all the cultural initiatory background that me and Nawasha had, we settled on the relationship because the relationship is the seed of the family. The family is the seed of the community. The community is the seed of the nation. And the nation becomes the seed of world humanity. So
Mhm.
we're coming back to root understanding. But for Black people, it's very challenging because we are still besieged by the value system of these people who have oppressed us. We have never been freed. You've been emancipated, right? And what is emancipation? It's
Mm.
moving you from chattel slavery to psychological bondage, but it's not freedom. There is no document in American cultural history that says the slaves were freed. It said armed slaves, freed slaves in armed rebellion. But if you look at the Emancipation Proclamation, it's just saying we stop that thing so that
Mm.
this other thing can operate. And so we're in the illusion of inclusion, as you've heard many people say. And so that is really affecting our relationships at a tremendous level. And that's why we say as therapists, there is no such Black person as a person who doesn't need serious therapeutic support. However, you better make sure that it's just not a chocolate covered Black person. You better make sure that it's somebody like us, because if you don't have the paradigmal vision of who we are in our nature,
Right.
just guide somebody to the Freudian, Jungian nonsense. And you will just do cognitive behavioral therapy where a person will come to you for 20 years and just talk until they feel better for 20 minutes
This
and then go back to a psychotic life.
why relationship
So,
education is so important,
mhm.
because we have a lot of challenges, but you can lie to yourself and say that you are healing for too long, right? There's a lot of trauma. And if you've experienced trauma just by being in this system for 20 years, 30 years, that doesn't mean that it takes that long for healing.
Absolutely not. No.
So what I'm doing right now, because we've been in 1 hour, and so what I like to
I
do
know
in the
you got a lot of
last hour.
questions left. We taking too long for the answers.
No, no, no. What I'm
Okay.
saying
Why
is,
don't
in
you give
this
some
in
more
this
throat lozenges?
no, it's no, it's fine. You guys are dropping a lot of jewels, and I appreciate it. I'm just saying, in the last hour, what I want to focus on is I try to allow people to come up and ask questions,
Yes,
because
yes,
this
yes,
is,
yes.
I said this, the last hour is the solution hour, right?
Yes,
So people can come up, ask you guys information, and then
please,
questions, and you guys can
please.
respond. But before we get to Rico, I know Cheryl had a question. She asked, 1 minute. Is it going to take the large majority of Black people to solve this problem?
No,
Okay. So do
no.
you think it's just going to be a small handful that's going to?
It takes a seed. So it takes a seed to grow a forest. It's a small minority of white people operating this or originating the system. The rest of the white people just benefit from it, and we call it white
Yes.
privilege. They have a privilege, but they're not operating the system. In fact, it only works if they're ignorant to the system too. So their unjustifiable arrogance and stuff is sincere. They believe that they are superior. They believe that they are dominant. They believe, even though the Punnett Square is there and many other historical facts are there, it is systematic that they don't know about any of that stuff. And
Gotcha.
then when you show it to them, they could care less. They
Yeah.
will say, "Oh wow," but I'm still not giving up my privilege. And so the group of people that is actually running the system, they bank on that. They bank on that. So this is not a totalitarian state idea. This is a small group of what we call the elites that
Mm-hmm.
are using the masses of their people to perpetuate the system. And so this is why one of our judges, Francis Cress Welsing, and actually Nellie Fuller had said as well, um, everybody white is not actively a racist, but they potentially are, because they can easily be seduced into the system, and they come to understand in their evolution, probably somewhere in college where they go out and feel like they're going to do good in the world. They are faced with this dilemma. Okay, do I be righteous and try to help all of these people who, in my mind, have no power and are being oppressed? Or do I join in with my grandfather and them who are running things? And even though they're corrupt in their thinking, I'm gonna inherit their wealth, And then I'll just make myself believe, and I'm just do something good because I listen to hip hop music and I like having sex with black people and stuff like that. So I'm not racist. In fact, some of them, a white person told me I'm more black than the average black person because I know tribal and all of this coastal history. And I said, man, if you don't get your ass out of here, like you really believe that? Yeah, and like,
Yeah.
so I don't even want to even try to detach you from that. But let me tell
Right.
y'all this: you're in a play that was written before you guys got here. Y'all only been here for about a couple of seconds out of our history on the world clock. Your time is absolutely up. Nature, you're at a minus birth rate. Nature is against you. Everything is against you. And the power that you were granted, you have literally destroyed yourself. So in your lifetime and in your children's lifetime, you are going to see the reestablishment that is happening psychologically for black people, and then you will see the power change. And
Okay.
then I tell black people that you've never really seen a white person because you're seeing them for as much as they've done in the world, they're still in a position of power. Once they're starting to fall from power, you're going to see what they're really like. But I tell white people this: you have never really seen black people because we've been subjugated for 400 years. And now, as we're starting to wake up, there are biological realities that are happening inside of black people, DNA strands that were absent that are vibrating back, and many other metaphysical things that what black people are actually like, you've only seen a modicum of that. When you really see what we're like, then it's like the matrix, if you will. Like like the veil has been pulled off, and you're going to understand the dynamic that we're in. But I'm glad that you mentioned Sherelle because Sherelle said something earlier that I saw. She
Hmm.
said something like, I think I lost my soulmate or my soulmate must be dead or something like that. I want to say to this, Sherelle. So there's two things. There is the noun, the soulmate. Everybody has one soulmate. If you understand this symbol called the akoma, that we are miscalling the heart, that is an African symbol. It says that man and woman were one being on a spiritual level, separated, and go through their trials of life or the humps of life, like we say hump day, and they reconnect in the physical realm to point back to the spiritual realm for which they came. So this is Jack and Jill going up the hill and falling back down, Hansel and Gretel and all of that stuff. Now, everybody only has one soulmate, but you can practice the art and sign of soul mating with whoever you choose. And so even if you're not literally with your soulmate, because that science is hidden right now. It has to do with purpose and cosmology, not astrology, but cosmology and a bunch of sciences that we really don't have access to right now. It was hidden during this time to allow these weaker people to rule, right? But once it comes back in the fore, everybody will reconnect with their literal soulmate. In the meantime, you can choose the verb soulmate. You can soulmate with anyone who you choose by using the art and science of Black love culture. And that's what we teach. And that's why our first book is called Akoma Day, a guidebook into the sacred science of soulmating and the cultural alternative to Valentine's Day. So I just wanted to say that, Sherelle, because
Yeah.
when I saw you say that, a lot of people are defeated. And we are not here to be pessimists. We don't believe in that. We work with thousands of people around the world. We literally believe in love. My name, Mansho Edu, means Black love. So I'm about it for real. I really believe it. And I believe that everyone, I know everyone is worthy, but I also believe that everyone can find a divine love, whether you polygamous, whatever your choice is, you can find that and still use the art and science of soulmating. Right now, what we're using is the art and science of emotional immaturity. And I am using you to secondary masturbate, or I'm using you to just placate my emotions. Yeah, 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 yeah. And that's what we're
So,
doing.
So
Rico, hey, bro, that's
yeah,
what it is.
so I want to make sure
We
I
ain't
want.
really connecting with each other sexually. We're just using each other to hey, just come on over here and do this for me. I
So
don't
I
care
want to
about
go
you.
ahead and get Rico in here. Hey,
Go
Rico,
ahead, Rico.
how are you?
Hi, hi, hi. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah,
Yes, yes,
yeah.
yes.
Thanks
Okay,
for
good.
joining us. What you got for Mansho and
Well,
Washa?
let me first say, for anyone that's celebrating, happy holidays,
Yes.
Merry Christmas, whatever, your choice since we're in the holiday season. And this is my first time being here with Sister Hanifa, and I knew she'd knock it out of the box. And this has been a great, 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 great conversation. I hope that some of my questions didn't throw you guys off because I was
No.
presenting some of them to Hanifa and
Yeah.
so forth. But I come into this conversation, I've learned a lot. That's why I knew coming over to this space, I'm a more mature gentleman without dating myself, a
Mm-hmm.
little bit older, but I've always lived my life believing that I'm on a perpetual learning lesson. And no matter how much my experience is not as educated as you both are, but I have a lived experience.
That's more important.
And I mean, almost everything you guys said has been spot on. I'm not into the holistic healing things, but I'm learning,
Mm-hmm.
things that I know I need to do as I age more in life. And I wanted to say, for me, the thing that got me the most, and I know you spoke about the gentleman who I'm also not a fan of, when I'm in particular speak about our community, and I believe, without mentioning his name, because I hate to get, because I
Right.
think I look at the harm that's done to our community. Look
Absolutely.
at you and your wife. You guys are credentialed, professional therapists, specialists, and you guys should have that platform to speak on that topic. There
Right.
are just far too many people in that space speaking harm into our community. I'm a happily married man, but I have 5 sons. I got one that's
Yeah.
married. I want more to be. And I look at, and thank God my sons don't listen to that garbage anyway, because I'd
Right.
kill them.
Right.
But I listen to these guys have this huge platform, and they speak all this misogyny, all this black woman hate. I don't even know where it comes from.
Yeah.
I'm gonna date myself. I'm 57 years old. I'm five
Okay.
years older than the gentleman. So I'm
Right. So
like,
we in the same zone. I'm 51.
yeah. So I don't
Yeah.
even know where to me, and I always classify, as you said, it's the misinformation that's being put out into our community.
Mm-hmm.
And if I tell 70% of something and leave that 30% out, that's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
It
Absolutely.
completely changes the dynamic, and it's so harmful. And I'm so angry about it because they don't take any responsibility. I sat here and I listened to you and your wife speak, and you guys speak in a more nuanced, balanced, professional manner. We're never getting that from those guys, from
Well,
these YouTube charlatans, and it's harmful. And by the millions, they're listening to him when they should be listening to YouTube.
well,
Well, let me say something first.
Rico.
Let me just add something. Because they really should be listening to their parents. So one reason why maybe your sons might not be listening to something like that is because they've seen you in a relationship.
Yeah, that's what I
So
was going
that's
to say.
always going to be the primary thing. When you have a void of caregivers, or you have not, we're not intentionally teaching our children lessons about love the same way we teach them lessons about their car, lessons about going to school, lessons about cleaning the house. We are extremely intentional when we want them to do the dishes, do their laundry, cut their hair. We say, hey, I'm going to teach you how to shave every day or every Sunday for the summer, right? We do those types of things with our children, but when it comes to communicating, when it comes to conflict resolution, we're not intentional. So the younger people that I see sometimes chiming in on certain shows and online, it's because they have a void of caregivers. They have a void of guidance.
It's
So
a
they're
it's a
they're searching and they're looking for someone who will talk to them, and they don't have anything to compare it to. They don't have anything. They don't have the wisdom that comes from actually living in a relationship with somebody and saying, "Hey, I'm happily married." There's a certain amount of wisdom that comes from doing that the first time. If we can reduce the transference of information and give that wisdom to our children, then we would be better off. And this is where you have to step in and do the children of your sister, the children of your neighbor, because
Right.
there is an absence
And and
of
and,
caregivers.
and I think that, for all I know many therapists who aren't married. I would I I love y'all, but I would tell Black people, don't go to them for relationship information. You're better off going to people like you who are actually married. The reason you see the nuance that you're talking about, and I'm sure we would see it with you if we sat and had dinner with you and your wife, is because we're actually living in African culture. In European culture, a lot of people got these advanced degrees, and they teach therapists this in the session: do not allow the client to focus on you. There's some truth in that. But when
Mhm.
an intelligent Black person sits here and say, "You're talking to me about my 6 children. Do you have children?" And then the therapist says, "No, we're not here to talk about that. If your ass don't have no children, I don't even care about your degree." You know what I'm saying? You are not. Now we got 6 children. Our oldest son is 27. Our youngest daughter is 3. We got a grandchild that's 2 years old with his aunt that's 1 years older than him. And we got 4 in between, ranging from 21, 18, 13, or about to be 13, 12, and 11. So if I'm talking to somebody who got a bunch of degrees, see, again, the value system, we think it's credentials. The stuff you're hearing from us came from 2 places: cultural initiation and living together for 21 years and wanting to make that work. It doesn't come from some advanced degrees that we got in clinical therapy, and then because the stuff
Right.
teaching there, it hasn't helped. Black people have been therapists since the 70s.
Can
And
I?
look, we have consistently gone down as a people since the 70s. So it's not the fact that we got Black therapy now, because we just did a video a few weeks ago, is that therapy is the new Black. Black people are about to get hustled from therapy
Yeah,
the
yeah.
same
Mm.
way they got hustled from everything else if they don't wake up. It's no culture in it. So
Let
it's
me.
your cultural value system. So if we look at you and your wife, we could probably learn more from you than we did several years in school. Because now, see, I am a Black person who came from a community where 90%, 99% of the Black families were mated. So as a very young man, I believed in love.
Right.
I saw it everywhere, right? And most of those couples from that community, that little suburb that our dad moved us to, that I hated when we moved there, because it was like only 30% Black people and
Mhm.
70% white people. But my dad said, "Hey, look, it ain't no families around here where we live. So we got to move over here where Black families exist." And the fact that we in the mix of these white people is what it is, but this is where all the families at. And if we're gonna make it as a family, we got to be around other families. We hated that because we lost all our friends. But in hindsight, as we grew and we made friends with all these families, I had one friend who lived with his grandmother. He didn't live with his mother or his father. Out of the 300 families that I knew, all of the Black families were mated, and most of them stayed mated until somebody died. Many of them are still mated. I'm 51. Some of them are celebrating 62 years married and stuff like that. They're still together. So it was normal for me. But now in this generation, it ain't no neighborhoods left. It's the neighbors are gone. It's just the hood.
But
So when you see a person like KS that's slick, he's good looking,
right,
because let me tell you this. If he didn't look like he looks and presents like he presents, a lot of
0%.
people wouldn't even listen to him. But he has an image, and we're in the era of illusion through social media.
Yes, we are.
And
Mhm.
so he
Yes,
has
we
an
are.
imagery that makes people say, "Ooh,
Let me ask you a
ooh."
question. Let me ask you a question, and it's particularly to you, and your wife can chime in, but I want to speak to you mostly.
Mhm.
And for full transparency, I've been married a few times,
Okay,
so I'm not on my first marriage,
good
but
for
I've been in
you.
this current marriage for almost 10 years.
Good for you
In,
that
in
you
each
keep
of my
getting married.
marriages, because I believe in the institution of marriage. But
Yes.
however, so I've been and this is probably the greatest issue I have with this gentleman and how he's perpetuated this narrative, and I see it all throughout YouTube, is this the way that they degrade stepfathers.
Mm-hmm.
And I hold that position dearly. I
Mm-hmm.
don't encourage any man to be a stepfather.
Mm-hmm.
However, I would never discourage any man from being a stepfather. It's an individual choice. And my problem is they speak so poorly about the community and all of these fatherless black boys. That's all I hear. All these fatherless black boys, these single mothers raising. And I'm like, the one best opportunity for a young black child to get a man to come into his life through another man who's willing to step up and replace the role of his biological father who's gone missing for
Whatever.
unfortunate one. And we have this whole community of men that are telling them not to do it. And I'm sitting there saying to myself, like, what the hell is wrong with y'all? I'm
Mm-hmm.
not telling a man that he should do it. I don't have stepkids. I have children.
Right.
Period.
Right.
Full stop. You try calling one of them a step, you got to fight on your damn hands.
Right.
And it hurts me because I grew up in a community where while people weren't beating down the door to be anybody's stepfather, nobody was discouraging them. I mean, they're literally almost giving
Yeah.
fucking classes on saying, don't do it. It's
Yeah.
not. And I try to tell them, look, your concern is I've never been a stepfather for the kids.
Right.
It was my relationship with the woman,
Right. Absolutely.
knowing that the children was a part of it. And
Absolutely.
my relationship, even when I divorced from my second wife, my stepsons, they weren't my stepsons then, and they didn't become my stepsons, and there was no break in the relationship because I had an individual relationship with them that was unbreakable.
Right.
And that's why I don't understand how and why is this narrative or this poison being pushed out into our community that,
It
you
is.
know, and
It,
these are men that are sons of single mothers.
that is an excellent point
And
that you're
I have
bringing
a
up.
question too when you
And the
finish.
focus of it, you just spoke to it. So it's clear to see, a couple of things. Number one, Kevin Samuels seems to be angry at his own mother. So that's something
Uh-oh.
that I see as a therapist in his upbringing. Now he doesn't discuss his father at all, really, but he talks about his mother, and I think that talking, even when you say single mother homes, that's a misnomer. It's really an unmated home because you're actually moving from. So we're very bullish about words and terms. In our book, we do a bunch of exercises, and one of them is word purge and word cultivation. So, like, Black people are insane when they're saying romantic and a lot of other things when we have over 4,000 words to express love. But again, the white man is in our psyche, right? But so when we're calling something a single mother home, it's actually a misnomer. Even though I've been a single parent, custodial parent, and a non-custodial parent. So we have 6 children, but 3 of them I had when we came together, right? So there's so many dynamics, and I applaud you for getting married and willfully. This is forever. But if this one should end, get married again. If this would end, I would get married again. When I was going through initiation one time, right? It was a bunch of us, like 30 of us, and we were laughing at Elizabeth Taylor had gotten married, right?
Yes.
And the elder Baba Haru, Ankh Ra Samad Sepatah from the shrine of Smitawi said, he let us talk and stuff. And he said, it's very honorable that this white woman who has the means to never be married believes in marriage enough that she would get married. We was like, what kind of fool gets married 8 times, right? He said, it's honorable that she does that because most women will lay with 8 men who never married them.
Woo!
The institution of marriage is divine. So here is a white woman who, even though she played Cleopatra and all that, he's comedic, and he was like, even though she did all of that and dissed our people, I still salute her because before the world, knowing that she will be ridiculed and all of that, has millions of dollars. She's secure financially and she's beautiful to white men. She doesn't have to marry, but she's choosing to because she believes in the institution of marriage. We're so disconnected from that. We're afraid. Now, we salute things that I say this as a therapist. Me and Nawasha say this all the time. This is, if you hear this, this is one of our talking points. We went from hiding our dysfunctions to accepting them. Now we celebrate our dysfunction.
Yes.
Everything that's dysfunctional, we celebrate it like it's some kind of, I was watching this show that I just saw. It's called Selling Tampa. I watch. We don't watch TV much at all, but somebody saying, "Hey, Moncho, I think you will like this show because the women are not really catty. They don't go through the ratchetness, and it's a show about a bunch of beautiful Black women who are selling luxury real estate, like over $1 million." And so that's an interesting field to me. So I watched it. And I would have to admit that they really do a good job. From what I saw like 2.5 episodes, as much as I could take of it, right? When they had conflict, they did really well resolving conflict, and they showed each other a lot of respect. You hurt me, you hurt. It wasn't the bitch and the tea flying all over the place and all that we've come accustomed to with Black women. But one of the girls got divorced, and she told the rest of the group, "I'm getting divorced." They all started crying and stuff like that. And they said, "We're going to throw a party." And she was like, really, it's insane to throw a divorce party because a family is being broken up. This is not something to celebrate. Now, they still did the party. They still did it. But
Of course.
it's great that she said that. And then when they were watching, even with that, I'm looking like all of these beautiful women. One of the lead women who runs the real estate agency, they're making millions of dollars. She is dealing with Chad Ochocinco, and she got pregnant. And so she FaceTimes him to tell him, "Oh, I'm pregnant," right? And they celebrating, and how we going to do this? And from their plan, she's in Tampa, he's in Miami. The plan was, how are we going to live in 2 separate homes and raise this baby? And they jumping up and down. And I'm saying, you could tell as a therapist, I can tell. I had a client tell me, "I just want to have children. I don't even care about the father." And I said to her, "What you're saying is you don't really care about the child. You're having the child for your own reasons." And what's happening to us now, my youngest client last year was 4 years old. My oldest client was 76, right? And they both talked about the same thing, the dysfunctionality of their parents. I am a therapist. My sister is a psychologist in Atlanta. We're therapists because of the dysfunctionality of our parents. This is such a huge thing because as mother and father, we don't always, the partner is not always a part of our life. So in other words, we didn't know them our whole life. And so whenever the relationship didn't work out, we could cut them off and out of our mind. They wasn't there from the beginning and they won't be there no more. But a child can't do that. They are their mother and father are their life. And so if their mother and father have no accordance or no parental union, psychologically there's a damage where mothers and fathers had sex. Now they're at a place where they can't even be in the same room with each other. They won't even get on the phone with one another. I don't care if you're 59, if you're 60, to know that your parents are living and they hate each other is psychologically damaging. And so this is some of the stuff that me and Nawasha are out to heal.
So, Nawasha, I know you want to say something, but just bear in mind, I'm going to transition into this other question here.
Okay.
What are some of the things we need to start doing immediately to fix our relationships with each other? Just give me some action steps for the men and give me some action steps. That way we don't have anyone that comes to the table. What about the man? What about the woman? I know all the time. So I want you guys to give me some action steps for men and for women. Some things that we can start doing, just immediate things to really begin to rectify, to reconcile our relationships.
I think the most important thing that really will solve all of our challenges is to understand that relating is its own system. So much like we go to seek professional development, we go to seek, financial advice, we solicit
work on our
a
car,
nutritionist or a personal trainer. we have to understand that parenting, dating, courting, separating, even being a step parent, all of those things involve a system. We have a lot of pain because we are dabbling, we're halfway putting our toe in into terrain that we're
Very
unfamiliar with,
serious.
right? So if we could accept that we don't know some things, right, along our process to the goal, and then really say, how do I learn those things? I think one of the problems that we have, whether we're a man or a woman, is we want connection because this is how children keep getting created. We're still having sex, we're still trying to get married. We want the connection and we're going after that, but we don't accept that there are things that I don't know the same way we accept that in other areas of our lives. So if we say, hey, I have a work sphere, I'm going to go to college, I'm going to get an internship, I'm going to get somebody to help
Continuing
guide
education
me,
credits.
and then I'm going to work at this place. I have a career plan where even if I don't have a great one, sometimes the system that I get into has its own. And they give me a promotion or they make the suggestion of what else I should do. And we don't realize that everything that we're in is a part of a larger social system, but it breaks down into smaller and smaller systems. And we were just talking about this last night because we said, people understand this at one level because we might go to a cardiologist, we might go to a podiatrist. Like we understand that there are specialties within our one human body. We have 11 body systems. If something happens with my digestive system, I don't go to the cardiologist. Right. I know that I need to go to someone about my digestive system or my reproductive system. If I'm a woman, I'm going to the gynecologist, right? Because even though we're on the same spectrum as human beings, I'm a woman and I'm going to go where my anatomy asks me to go. Now, even in that, I know that this doctor probably has a couple hundred patients, right? And we're a little bit different enough to be different women, different human beings, different things going on with our system. But I still accept that this person knows something about the system. They are a specialist, a master in that system. I think the same way we do that in so many areas of our lives, we have to understand that there are systems for relationships. Although I am an individual person and I'm going to deal with another individual person who is unique and will never, ever, 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 ever be duplicated on a planet, there are still systems of communication. There are systems for blending family. There are systems for resolving conflict. There are systems for sex and intimacy. There are systems to maintain passion and excitement. And I can learn the system and then adapt it to my individual relationship the way that I go and learn other things and adapt it to my individual life. And I think that that takes a presence of mind, right? But you don't want to get lost in the abyss of perpetual healing, right? Because
Right.
people say, hey, I'm healing, and will paint themselves into a corner, and there's enough for you to process for the rest of your life. You will never actually be ready for a relationship until you get in one, no matter how much you have learned, and actually then apply what you think you've learned with another human being lifetime and get their feedback. That's when you're going to evolve. And I think that we don't, you're never going to keep going to school getting ready for a job.
Right.
You're never going to, keep reading a book about nutrition and not have to get up and go to the grocery store and actually learn how to cook some meals for yourself. We have to understand that you can have some preparation, but you will not be ready for a relationship when you meet a person. You are going to curate and cultivate a relationship when you are in one. And that is what we have to understand. When it's time to dissolve it, there's also a system for that where you can keep the peace, you can keep the harmony, you can keep the grace and separate. And if we're blending families or caring for people who have a void somewhere, this is what we would naturally do in any community is we would know that if one person has a problem, we all eventually are going to have a problem. If one person is sick, we will all eventually be sick. That's why when we were in power, we always extended ourselves at the bare minimum to others. This is how we even started getting integrated because we knew that if there's a problem over there, it might be 100 miles away. Soon it will be 75 miles away. Soon it will be 50 miles away. Soon it will be 1 mile away. So we might as well extend some help. As they say, the tide is going to lift all the boats. Those are philosophies that we had. Right. So we have to understand that now that men need to seek out support from other men and come to an understanding about what it means to be a man and how they're going to have accountability for that and how they're going to have a model for that. if they don't personally have one? Where does the model come from?
Mm-hmm.
Women need to do the same thing. Saying, not we're going to gather in women's circles and process pain over and over and over.
Mm-hmm.
And not that, hey, someone has abused us and men have hurt us. So now we are just going to, jump into our freedom and say, forget them and we're going to be who we
Right.
want to be. And that is not necessarily, that's not moving towards the goal. That is still, again, processing pain. So there's times for the male group, there's times for the female group to get together and to do that, but it's not an exclusion of actually really coming together and having real relationships with our parents, with our children, with our neighbors. This is the only way that you truly perfect your character, is to get the feedback from another human being. If you think you've gotten to a level, whatever that is, in your intellect, in your emotional self, in your spiritual self, the way that that is really tested is when another person comes into play. Because your idea of yourself is one thing, but what you actually do when you're talking to your children and when you're thinking about your neighbor and when you're at work and when you're in an intimate relationship, that's who you really are. So you don't even know yourself until you get into a relationship. And that relationship, when the two people are doing that, is where you can see imperfections, because now you get feedback from someone. And then
Mm-hmm.
that's the opportunity for you to grow and heal those imperfections.
I would agree, Rashard. The manosphere is a pain circle, brother. It really is. And I, I would say to Rico, something you said earlier, um, the reason why this is happening is like the throw up. So like when you're sick and you come to like you come in the emergency ward and you threw up, you're showing all the poisons that are in you. Kevin Samuels in the in the manosphere, and that, again, I'm not Kevin Samuels is a fellow victim. This is what we have to understand. He is not a leader, he's a fellow victim. And so, because he's been victimized as my brother, as a therapist, I can see. Now, me and Kevin Samuels the same age. I wrote a post back in March of last year or March of this year that got shared hundreds of times saying like I'm a 51-year-old therapist, and I broke down 9 points about Kevin Samuels that are psychotic for us to be listening to. This was before he kind of really blew up, but I
Mm-hmm.
saw it coming. And I have been telling women like 10 years ago, oh, this is coming. Trust and believe. You're about to see an era where black men now get funded by the oppressor to diss black women. It is the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
We are each other.
Mm-hmm.
So there is never a thing that one of us is going through that the other isn't going to. The so-called gender war that we're having is as erroneous as a head side of a coin arguing with a tail side of a coin saying who has more value. It's the same damn coin. You got the same, you know what I'm saying? Like you are the same coin. So
Yes.
whenever you see black people going through this, it's a telltale sign that you don't have a cultural model, because you can only address the problem. You don't, in order to be a leader, you have to be solution based. And
Yes.
I would say to Hanifa's question, the way Nawasha said, I would say it, agree with her 100% and say it succinctly like this: men need a rite of passage from a group of men to go through malehood, boyhood into manhood. Women
Mm.
need a rite of passage from a group of women to go through femalehood, girlhood into womanhood. Couples need a rite of passage from couples to go through courting, mating into nationhood. We need our cultural value system. That's called community. That's called culture. But then individually, we need trauma healing. We
Mm.
need relationship education. So we need to know how to prepare for love, how to select and vet, how to court, how to mate, how to date, how to, because dating is not what courting is, and we don't understand that. Dating is only for committed couples. Dating is the process of growing together so you don't grow apart. And we
Mm.
have a 52 date night challenge that we can share with you how you do dates in the house, out of the house with a very low budget. But what you're doing is hosting each other into your style. We need to learn to harmonize style. We need to learn to resolve conflict. And then we need to legacy build because the children are watching whether we have physical children or not. For the first time, we have seen as we go around the country, little girls don't believe in relationships. And
Mm-hmm.
this is a new thing. Boys have been hurt for a while because daddy hasn't been around and we don't see women, men loving women. So for a person like Kevin Samuels, for example, you grow up around your mom and you don't see men loving her. This is what happens in a dysfunctional family. Okay. We think my children know I'm the good one and their father or their mother is the psycho one. That's not how children think. They think one person is wrong and the other person is weak. That's the psychology of the child because one person messed this family up and the other one allowed it to happen, or they didn't have the skill to stop it from happening. So, although they may love both parents, they don't have the vantage point that parents have because
No.
they don't have a history before their parents.
No.
So, they can only look to the two parents. And when the family's dysfunctional, somebody's wrong and somebody's weak. Now, we're so dysfunctional we don't even care about being weak, long as we're not the one that's wrong. But the reality is they're both wrong. Both of those positions are wrong. We shouldn't be weak or wrong. But
So I have
just rather throw the mud at the other parent. So go ahead.
so I have a question because I know we're gonna be wrapping up shortly, and I hate that we're wrapping up because it's getting real sweet, right?
Yes.
So when we spoke briefly on the phone, you said something that I think um a lot of people may have take issue with, considering the current climate. You said to me, black men and black women would would never really be happy without each other. And you
Yes.
said something along the lines of we don't want to accept it, but it's a fact. Black
Absolutely.
men and black women will never truly be happy without each other. Can you extend that in integrate it into the solution piece, please? What do you mean by
Yes.
that?
Yes. What I simply mean by that is we have to see, as black men, we have to see black women as the female version of ourselves. And as black women, we have to learn to see black men as the male version of ourselves. It is because there is an insidious and very sly enemy that is giving us our verbiage about each other or programming us. But we're never going to listen. Let me give you some full disclosure. Because of where I grew up, I dealt with white people before. Now I ain't never had them in a relationship, but I certainly had sex with them, right? White women. Let me be clear and say that. Let me be clear and say that I've never had sex. Right, right. So at a different time in my life, many, many eons ago, right? But you could deal, and I think what's the national average is I think black men are marrying the most out at 87% of us are married to black women. So 13% of us are married to other, and we're the greatest number on the earth. Women, I think, is 94. So it's only like 6% of black women who are not married to black men. But when you never hear that statistic from the solution base, you always hear it from the other side, right? And so this is another thing about just spewing statistics out, as our homeboy does. Statistics are not facts. They never have been. They never will be, right? Statistics are social indicators. And we know this because we have, when you're doing advanced degrees, you got to do exhaustive studies. And I've done something with 300 people, exhaustive study with like 300 people around relationship when I was working on my master's. When I read you the statistics of that study, I could present that study. It's really only 300 to 500 people. A lot of times you hear these statistics about black men and stuff. Your ass ain't in them. Nobody knocked on your door. You're talking about a very small group of people because a statistic is really just an idea that even when you do the queries, you have to ask the question a certain way. And you see this today in conversations with Black women or Black men, where they'll ask a question and then the range of answers could be infinite, but they'll say, you got to say this or that, this or that. This is say it's a yes or no question. It's a yes or no. And the reason you're doing that is because if somebody answers authentically from something else, your thesis gets taken apart. So you have to keep the people um, in a specific box, right? And so we, again, this is the value system of a person who's not striving to accept you as you are, but trying to control you to prove or disprove something they believe before they met you. This is what we're doing in relationships. But the reason I say that we are never going to be happy without each other is because we are each other. It's really that simple. Black men are Black women, and Black women are Black women. I mean, Black men. So how could you be happy without yourself? Now, what you're seeing in the social dynamic, again, now y'all keep in mind, you're really looking at the 45 to under group. 45 and older people, they not having this issue, even if they're single. They're not talking as crazy as this young group is talking. You know what I mean? So you got to understand, because in this culture, they only value youth. They don't value eldership. Why? Now, this is a value system that Black people don't have. The reason they value youth is because youth is more susceptible to bullshit.
Yeah.
They're more susceptible, even if I don't know what's right. If I live long enough, 65 and older, you can't tell me something that's wrong anymore, because I've seen that shit 100 times. Like, I know that's wrong. I might not know the right thing. Your grandmama tell you, I don't know nothing about that, but I know that is not right.
So someone is asking, is this what you're doing? Because I want to educate. Simon, you're free to come up and ask a question, but because this, I was actually going to ask it, because whenever this comes up, you have a thing of either the young people say, well, you guys failed us, or this, why we always putting down the young people. Is
No,
that what we're doing?
we're not putting down young people, Simon. What we're saying is young people are victimized a different way than older people. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Now, if you heard what I said the reason they focus on young people is because they know that young people are more susceptible to bullshit, is what I said. What I mean specifically, Simon, by that is that you don't have experiential experience. I am not suggesting that older people are better than young people.
Right.
If older people do not have young people, we are lost. If young people do not have older people, you are lost. We are each other. There is no separation. So when I look at my 3-year-old daughter, I see myself. When I looked at my 87-year-old or 90-year-old grandfather, I see myself. This is African thought. We don't make distinction between this. In fact, when an elder is about to make their ascension, they give their wealth to the youngest child, because now the rest of the community will raise that child and care for that child. If I give it to the closest person to me or the middle group, the children might get ignored. So the same way, Simon, the narrative that all men are dogs, Black men are dogs, that never came from Black women. That came from white women. The fact that all Black women are less desirable, they're a bitch, they're hard to get along with, that's not Black men saying that. That is white men who are speaking through the mouth of white women. So now we got the generational thing. The older people are against the younger people. We are your parents, and we are your uncles, your community. You are us. So there is no separation. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying, and forgive me if I said something that was offensive to you as a young person. But you know, Simon, name 10 elders that y'all listening to. This is what I would say. If you're listening to somebody about relationships, they got to be somebody who's in a relationship over 7 years. They got to be somebody who loves Black people. They have to be someone who understands the global system of racism, white supremacy, why it exists and how it operates. They have to be a person who their solutions do not aggrandize them. Like, so in other words, the solutions me and Nawasha have will work whether me and Nawasha are present or not. They're not something that is just about us and it's going to make us better. It's going to make all of us better. And
So,
ultimately, it's got to serve us as a group of people. Now, if you can name 10 people like that you're listening to, then but what we're actually doing is listening to anybody.
yeah. So I have a quick question. Rico, I saw that you was gonna jump in and say something, so I'm gonna allow you because we really only have 5 minutes left. But I just wanted to speak to something that Mancha said when you said this thing of Black women being the least desired and so forth. It's very interesting because when people say, oh, the studies have shown, or the information is out there, that I'm just like, whose information are you guys taking on and saying, okay, our women are the least attractive and where is this coming from? And it's like, we're not taking the time to really like carefully analyze, dissect the information that we're taking in. Instead, we're taking it in and then we're projecting it onto each other. So when you just said that, I'm just like, I hear a lot of conversations and Black men bring this up. You guys are on the bottom. You guys are the least desired, the least attractive. And I'm like, do you know who talking points these are? Do you know where this is coming from? That you are actually regurgitating this mess? But go ahead, Rico, and then I want to start to wrap up.
Right, because the only reason why I want to speak to that, because I wanted to speak to, I'm sorry, sir, I can't remember your name or pronounce it correct.
Mancho or Nawasha?
You.
Oh, Mancho.
Mancho, okay. Yeah. And the reason why I said this is because you were spot on when you were speaking about the statistics. And again, I hear like in the manosphere and Mr. Samuels would just throw out a lot of statistics that's not rooted or substantiated in facts or evidence. There's a statistic about 80% of women file for divorce. There's never been a study anywhere to prove that fact to be true. While I do believe that the majority of divorces are filed by women, that could be 51%, and 51% sound drastically differently than 80%. I've been divorced twice. I've never put down my sex. I've been working in the legal industry for over 35 years. And they have defendant and complainant. They don't have male, female. There is no legal documents that list sex because it doesn't matter. You can't, it's not there. If you've ever been divorced in a marriage certificate, there's a husband and wife, and I believe now it might be spouse due to the same sex marriages. But in a divorce, it's a plaintiff and a defendant.
Kevin Samuels saying that because he's been divorced twice.
Right. So what I'm saying is you cannot factually correlate information where there is not a field that gives a desired effect. The second part of it is when they talk about things like it was another statistic they brought out, and I said they use terms like it is the big thing they were on as of recently was this paternity fraud, and they got this huge thing, and I'm like, the percentage of paternity fraud is very minute. It is not an epidemic. So now literally they're telling all these men, get a DNA test. And I'm like, wait a minute, you're in a 10-year marriage, you get your wife pregnant, and now you're going to accuse her. I'm like, why would you cause that damage? And if the baby come back yours, well, she should understand. No, she shouldn't. No, she shouldn't. You're causing trauma in a relationship. And this is information that they're giving out willfully. I'm like, the vast majority of paternity tests come back, you are the father. We sensationalize the small minority where he's not. I said, but the percent, they was like, I watched him on a show the other day, said the rate is between 2 and 30%. I'm like, it's 30% in fucking Nigeria. Forgive me. We're in the US of A. In the US of A, they estimated at 10%, and they said that's an overestimation. It's closer to 5%. Not that it does not matter. Not that it is not true. But when you make statements like that, unsubstantiated with any evidence, any proof, and then you put it out in the ether, and you good luck in trying to get this mess out of these people's heads. It's just not going to happen. They're going to Go on
Once
it with
you
it
put something
forever.
out there, it never goes out of your head, and people know this in court systems. So you can say that's, sustained
Inadmissible.
or that's
Yeah.
inadmissible.
Right.
Once it
It-
gets out
That's a
there,
that's a lawyer
you
technique.
can forget about, and even
Let me
when you
just
say
say it,
there's
even though it don't count,
right,
it's still going to sway you. So I throw it out, and the judge says we can't admit that, and then they turn to the jury and say scratch that from the record. But in
right,
your mind, it
you
already
can't.
has done the damage. Yeah,
And it disturbs me because even when, like when you said like with the statistics, I'm like a lot of statistics are self-reported. So
right.
when we send out a survey to 1,000 people, we're only getting the data back from the people who choose to answer
That's
and
right.
how they answer. And oftentimes people will answer away differently than the actual truth.
Absolutely,
So even
absolutely.
statistics reported
and
has
the
to
Look,
thing
be
that
taken with a
we
grain of salt.
we're killing our own ability to be critical. So
Yes.
we kill our children's ability to be critical when we send them to certain schools where the answer is A, B, C, or D,
Right.
instead of fill in the blank and actually give your opinion. So what happens is when you get any statistic, you can say
Mhm.
that women file for divorce more. But in that, as a social experience, it
Yes.
would be women also go to counseling more than men.
Yes.
Women
No,
also do a lot of other things before they make the decision to file for the divorce.
and which
So
That's
there's
true.
a story being told with any statistic. There's the both sides of the coin,
right.
but that is even inside of a full story.
And
So
what's left
How
out of
long
that?
did a person say, we have trouble
Right.
before they
Rico,
file for
Yes.
divorce?
Rico, 1 minute.
Go
So
ahead.
Simon is in.
we're way over, right? But
Okay.
Simon came up because he was talking from in the chat. So I
Yes,
just wanted to
Simon.
allow him an opportunity. We got guys. I am wrapping up in 5 minutes. Okay. I want to allow him the
You know
opportunity.
you can't talk about relationships in 2 hours, Hanifa.
I know, and I'm gonna bring you guys back for a part
Oh,
two
we
because
love to come back.
yes, please. So Simon, please go ahead. What you got for us? How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy
Same to
holidays,
you.
brother.
Yeah. So you just mentioned my name, so I was just sort of like, I had to pop up. So you had some interesting sort of perspectives on things. And the thing is, there's a lot of platforms out here, and everyone has their pick and choose, right? You can tune into any TV channel you want to. No one makes you tune into anything. Okay, right? So us as parents, us as adults, us as human beings, us as responsible people have the responsibility with the people that are around us to educate them in that sense. Okay. If you want to put your child on a PlayStation 4 all day long, that's your business. Okay. If you want them to listen to Kevin Samuels all day long, that's your business. Okay. But criticizing people for no apparent reason, it's becoming a bit of a carousel around here in terms of like, everyone's got their platforms, everyone's got their respective views. And, I just think that everyone needs to respect each other for us to have the conversation. Every time we keep pulling up everybody's names all the time, it just gets a bit like, what are we talking about here, really? When people take the time to actually put content together and make people have decent conversations that we need to have, and are going to progress people as Black people and progress our community. So that's all I was trying to say. It wasn't really anything sort of like a shot or anything. It's just like, you know, come on, do you get what I'm saying? It's like, how many people do we see on these platforms busting out Kevin Samuel jokes or turning around and saying, he's saying this and he's saying that? We know what he's saying. What are you saying? I'd love for to see, we see people on these platforms. You're Black brother, right? You got something to offer. Tell me something.
Right.
Do you get what I mean? Tell
Well,
me something. Don't talk to me about
Be
Kevin
about
Samuels. Tell me
relationship
something.
education. That's where
I,
the most important thing comes back to really having a system for understanding yourself, understanding other people, understanding what it even means to relate. Because we can talk all day about points that we just don't like about each other. We can talk all day about things that we've experienced that are trauma, and we would still be in the same place the next day because we're not going to progress if we don't actually come to understandings about other people or if we don't understand things about ourselves. So it's very important to understand that we are missing a whole facet of our life, a whole part of our life, when we don't understand that a relationship is a system. The same way that we're conceived and the same way we're in community, we will grow up, hopefully, and have those natural desires ourselves when we hit puberty, when we hit adulthood. And if we don't understand that, we need to know fundamental things about how to relate to another person, how to take ideas from within and be able to communicate them to another person so that they actually understand. If we don't understand that we need to do that, we will always have a problem. It'll be perpetual.
And I would say that we should talk about people like Kevin Samuels because there is a divinity in him. And this is what I was going to say to Rico, as I said at the beginning. We're therapists. We've been out here. We started our firm in 2012, right? Or no, pardon me, 2008. 2008, May 2nd, we instituted our firm, the culturally based counseling consulting firm. 2009, May 2nd, a year later, our daughter was born, right? Our oldest daughter was born. But with all the therapists that I know, with all the therapists, we got 3 best-selling books. We've been on Oprah and Essence and all over around the world, right? But we're still do not have the impact of all the therapists that I know as a person like Kevin Samuels. And this is the divinity that you have to understand. And this is why I said he is our brother. And I tell therapists all the time, I know therapists that have never really even heard of him and don't really know much about, never really watched one of his videos. They're too busy. They're like, who is he? What is he? What is he doing? What is he saying? He is significant. And that is a divine ordination that he is not even the author of. He has been placed before the world as the most popular man, black man, speaking about relationships in America. Now, we should respect that. I'm not saying we got to agree with it because I don't agree with most of what he says, but he does speak some truth. But what I'm saying is the idea that, again, Simon, I would challenge what you're saying about the individual. I have a child. When I send my child to school, there's not just my value system at play in my child's mind, because one of the basic human needs is to connect. There's 7 basic human needs. When my child is trying to connect with her friends in school, she has to embrace some of their value systems to be accepted. She can't just say, what my parents told me is the only thing I'm listening to. Nobody's myopic like that. In community, you are always taking and trading from one another. So when a person like Kevin Samuels is risen before us, Little Nas X, anybody that we think is like, whoa, there's a divinity in that. Understand that, Black people. There's a divinity in why certain people are being placed in leadership, or not even leadership, but they're getting a certain amount of attention, because it is an opportunity for us to learn and dialogue. More Black men are talking about relationships, whether they agree or disagree with Kevin Samuels, since Kevin Samuels came out, than I've ever seen in 30 years.
Yep.
So for that, I have to respect him. Now, I don't agree with a lot of stuff that he says, and some stuff he says I do agree with. But what I'm saying is he has been placed in a position, and he's not even the person who put himself in that position. And so there is no such thing as you just run your business or you just raise your children. That is individual value system. Black people are not like that. We don't function like that, and we shouldn't believe in that because it's not truth. If I would say, then what's the language you should be speaking versus the language you are speaking? Because you're speaking someone else's language, right? Because you're disconnected from yourself. And that's what's going to continue to happen if we don't collectively understand each other. Those of us that are skilled, like Denzel said in the Malcolm X movie, those Kevin Samuels has given people like me, and I work with 2 other therapists, 2 male therapists who are both married. We have a group called Countering a Conspiracy to Destroy Black Love. We come together and we try to be the clean glass. We need Kevin Samuels. because he gets the attention of the people, but we want to stand right next to him. So you can make the comparison yourself. But we're not trying to remove him, and we're not trying to vilify him. I said earlier, he is a fellow victim. He has been victimized in a way that many Black men have
Yes.
been victimized.
Yes.
Tommy Sotomayor was before Kevin Samuels,
Yes.
and he doesn't have a certain affect that Black women like. So Kevin Samuels is attractive. He's articulate. He has a style that is working for this generation. You know, to your taste. You know, but you know. So whenever these people are risen, they're still our brothers and sisters.
Yes.
You got to have an understanding in a whole context of what this represents for us as a group. So I just wanted to say that.
So
I
so
just
that's
wanted to say one thing,
go ahead,
Hanif.
Rico, because I wanna
Yeah, and
go
I'm
ahead.
gonna let it go. But
Okay.
my only thing is I will say this simply put: the truth can always withstand scrutiny. The truth can always withstand scrutiny. If what Mr. Samuels is saying is true, all the criticism in the world will rail against the stone of truth and will
That's
fall at
right.
its feet.
That's
If
right.
in fact what he's saying is not true, then we have a responsibility and, in fact, an obligation to scrutinize it because of the potential harm that it can have to our community. So when I hear his fans go, oh, well, don't say, and not just him, anybody, we just went through 4 years of this shit in this country,
That's
dealing
right.
with people refusing to question the truth before our eyes about different things. And to sit here in the Black community, which we all say in last place, so now
Tristan, that's
because
hilarious.
a con man or anybody who come and say sweet platitudes to us and make these young men feel, oh, well, it's finally our time, and it makes you feel good, no matter if he's leading you off to a road of destruction, we don't want to question it because it makes us feel good. That's fucking utter insanity.
Absolutely.
Okay, so here's what
It should be able to withstand the scrutiny, and people questioning it should be able to question it. And to anytime someone pushes back to that, that's a telltale sign to me that that's a fraud. Because if I'm telling the truth, I invite scrutiny.
Right.
Right.
so let me
Before you,
Simon, so can you just make your last point real quick, because I
yeah,
want to
because
wrap
I
up.
know you got to bounce. The point I was making was bringing out the person. So I jumped on your panel,
Right.
and the person that was speaking to me about Kevin Samuels, and I wanted to hear about them. So in the last 5 minutes, I know much more about them now than I did 5 minutes ago.
Okay.
Okay. I didn't know this person was this or this person was that. So that added value. It wasn't really about Kevin Samuels, to be honest. It was about the conversation, and that's what the progression is going to be for Black people. And you know, the chat is the chat, and what's not. And I appreciate you bringing me up. And I think that we need to continue having these conversations, and I hope to bump into to my man sometime in the future. Happy
Yeah.
holidays, happy
Happy
Christmas,
holidays.
whatever you want to say.
Something,
Good
brother.
night.
I
Love
Good
you
night,
guys.
I
Simon.
appreciate you. And let me just say for the record, we are Mansho and Nawasha Edu, happily married 20 years, best friends. We are the co-founders of the Acoma House Initiative, which is a culturally based counseling and consulting firm, which was started in 2008. We are known
at the beginning.
Yeah, we are known around the world as the creators of Acoma Day, which is a culturally based 7-day holiday around Black love from February 14th to February 20th, and is celebrated in 16 countries. We are the authors of 4 books, 3 best-selling books. We are also the founders and creators of the Black Love School, which is an international relationship education platform, an online platform for Black couples and singles. It's 65% singles and 35% couples from 11 countries from around the world. So we'll put all of that stuff in the link so that you can join and check it out and see. We have programs from $42 all the way up to the sky. So it's something here for you if you're interested in someone like us. And you know, again, we appreciate you. And I think I'm going to say, I think because Nawasha is going to close it
Well,
out.
No,
I,
I had something to say. That's what was
I
so.
think that we should continue to talk about anybody who's relevant, and we should understand Black men are jacked up. So if one of them comes forward and begins to voice something, because the brother is voicing something. If he
Mhm.
begins to voice something, we should listen. Black youth jacked up, black elders jacked up, black women jacked up, black children jacked up. So when anybody comes from that group and has something to say, it's not that we have to vilify, accept, or reject them, but I'm speaking from the therapeutic mind, and the watch is better at it than I am. We should listen because in the expression of their pain is a learning opportunity for us all. And so I think, Rico, as Rico was saying, I agree with all of the points he was making. But I think, Rico, if the manosphere hadn't risen this sick kind of psychoism that we see in the manosphere, I might not have ever met you, bro. Because for 40 years, black men have said, oh, that relationship stuff, that's women talking, that's Oprah stuff, that's it. I'm going in the other room, I'm going to watch the game. But now that so many men have risen out of the woodwork, and a lot of them are not psycho, but many of them are because they're hurt. And I'm using the word psycho. I'm a therapist. I would never use that in a real clinical session, but I'm saying it in a social media era, thing because people are using, like our brother is using sensationalism to be a shaker. There's a difference between a mover and a shaker. A mover takes the people from one point to another point with tact and grace and has solutions. A shaker just says something to shake everybody up and like, oh wow, did you hear that? Did you see what so and so said? But in this era, it's the shakers that get everybody's attention. So I thank Kevin Samuels for bringing me a bunch of clients and bringing me a bunch of opportunities to talk to a group of men who I otherwise would not have had the opportunity to.
So
So
I wanted to kind of wrap it up by saying Simon left, but I know he's still here. I
oh,
wanted to mention to him that he just walked in when Kevin Samuels was being mentioned. You
right,
guys had given so many different things that we could begin to do as Black people to kind of build this relationship, not just intimate relationships, just relationship between Black men and Black women. In the beginning, you guys stated what your credentials are, why you guys are why you guys are the ones, actually why you guys are able to speak on this with such authority, because not just because you're married and but you guys have the experience and you guys are currently working with Black people that you just said that are trying to couple and so forth. So that was the part I wanted to say to Simon, is that you just kind of came in when Kevin Samuels was mentioned, and Kevin Samuels was mentioned within the context of a specific topic that we were touching on, and that's it. This is not a channel that I don't do the Kevin Samuels response and video. I don't do that over here. That's not what we do. We had to discuss our community. We had to talk about solutions. The people that I bring on here, I want them to be able to, people that are equipped to have these conversations, because that's what we need. Like you just said
absolutely.
earlier, we have enough of these people that don't even have the experience and so forth necessary, the proof to say this has worked for me, right? And people are following them in flocks. So why not counter that by introducing people into the space that have solutions, that say no, this has worked for us, Black people, and talk about it within an African centered context, right? That's important, because we have the education and we have all of that, but we have a disconnect from culture, and I think that's the missing piece for a lot of the issues that we're trying to walk through. But before we leave, please tell the people again. I see that my moderator, Sean, is on it. Tell the people again where they can find you. I know you guys do couples counseling as well, so shoot it out there so I can close up.
We are actually going to be meeting in the Black Love School next Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern. If anyone who is listening would like to come, you can just sign up for the Black Love School. You'll get the email. you can definitely join the King's membership or the Queen's membership and get the 2 classes that are released every month that are the rites and passage that you should have gotten. So the information that you should have, but that you never received. This is what we're doing actively every 2 weeks, having a conversation, building community around the things that are really going to make the difference in your relationship. So not rehashing the past, not rehashing about, whoever popular people, because this happens all the time with celebrity relationships. We focus on others more than we focus on ourselves.
Right.
But if you really want to see a difference in your relationships, at some point it's going to have to come back to you, and you're going to have to focus on using things yourself. So if you want to, if you have a relationship right now that you think could be better in some way, we can definitely work with you one on one. If you, I see someone did drop our social media. If you reach out with a DM or in some way message us, we can send you the link to register for the one on one session, and I'll drop that in the private chat. But the community aspect is Black Love School, which was already in the chat. I'm going to type in how you can sign up for an individual session, because the session that we do as a discovery session is completely complimentary, because we want to just hear where you are in a relationship, whether you are seeking a relationship, whether you are trying to maintain a relationship, whether you want to enhance a relationship. Somewhere, everyone's in that spectrum. And we want to make sure that we can use, again, this indigenous medicine, the indigenous understanding of the universe, the skills that we can improve, the strengths that we can build on to improve all of our relationships. And that's really what our specialty is helping you transform quickly, so that you're not processing pain forever, so that you're not building a life of regret. Because at the end of the day, it's going to seem easier to have made choices. It's going to seem easier to have made changes because of that wisdom that you automatically accumulate. But you don't want to be sitting there at 120 years old with all the things that you could have done and should have done, right? You want to be able to benefit from the wisdom of your elders, the wisdom of your ancestors, the wisdom of the universe. You want to be able to use that now in your relationships, improve things now before people make a transition, before you feel that you're at the end of your life. Sometimes it gets crystal clear when you feel like you're at the end of your life, what you could have done to make yourself better, to be happier, to allow yourself the room to, really be in relationship the way you want. And we want to quicken that for everyone, because life is about the present. We're all leaving a legacy. We use the word soul all the time, for self, others, understanding, and love, right? That love legacy that we're leaving, whether we're paying attention or not, we are leaving an imprint everywhere we go. Even strangers are looking at us. I know I've seen strangers, and I can tell whether or not they just had a fight, and I can tell whether or not they're happy to be out with each other. That type of thing, whether you have children or not, you're always leaving a legacy. You're always leaving an imprint. And what's really important is for us to understand that, and for us to actively live like we understand that.
So we got free consultations, we got individual work, we got community work, we got books, we got male programs, female programs. The Black Love School is $42 a month. You get 2 master classes. In the spirit of my aunt, we made it $42 a month. It's the least expensive offer we have, but it's the most explosive. You get 2 master classes, and then 2 times a month, you're on a Zoom call with Black people from Chicago, Australia, Ghana, Canada, Detroit, Brazil. It's just beautiful. Couples and singles, and we go through the seasons. Culture of Love is in the winter, High African Spiritual Science and the Intimate Relationship. Spring is Spring into Love, new relationships and bringing new energy into old relationships. Summer is Heat of Love, Sex and Intimacy. And fall is the Harvest of Love, friends and family and an intimate relationship. Once you join your $42 membership, you got all of them classes. You can dive into any one of them, because it's over, what is it? How many is it in there now? 36 in there right now. So you got, for $42, you can get over a year's work. Every class is an audio visual class that me and Nawasha go through points, and then we give you heart work assignments so you can work on it. Then we all come together and talk about it as a group. That's the system in the Black Love School. The individual counseling and coaching is one-on-one, and the free consultation will get you that. The books, all of our books have heart work in them. So like this book has over 30 exercises that you can do for yourself and your family and your intimate partner, but it also juxtaposes a coma day next to Valentine's Day and show you the madness and then teach you the science about this symbol that is of your African ancestors that you have been taught to call a heart, but is actually in a coma. So we here, you know what I mean? We got work out here in the universe and we still rocking. So anybody who's interested, hit us up and we might have something for you.
Well, I want to say thank you guys. I am definitely bringing you back. I'm going to see what angle I want to come from, but it's still going to be around relationships because that's just a hot topic in general. And I agree with you. I think for the most part, because we really want to get it right, we're really trying to figure it out. And that's why people are constantly talking about it. Yeah. So I agree with you on that. But this has definitely been wonderful. I always enjoy you guys anyway.
We love rocking with you. We met Rico tonight. It's beautiful.
Yes, Rico.
And you can't do relationships it's never done.
I just wanted to dispel one notion, Hanifa, that you brought up about Black women being the least desirable. And I just wanted to drop this nugget to all my beautiful Black sisters, is that data comes from dating applications. Understand that. That comes from OkCupid, so on and so forth. And when you take that in contextually,
we said that before too.
The gradation between those are very small between the top to the last. While Black women may be last, the gradation between white women to Asian to Hispanic is a very small, minute, and dating apps only account for probably less than a quarter of the country's population.
Right.
So when we're throwing out these terms, we have to be careful. And I will never use Black women are the least desirable on junk science.
But we also know that Black women are the most desirable because we are the prototype that people are imitating when they inject their lips, when they get their body changed.
I just had to throw that out there.
The subconscious mind says that Black skin, Black hair, Black body features that are phenotypically associated with Black people are actually the most desirable.
And Black men are the least desirable for a relationship, most desired for sex. So it's like sexual on both sides. You're right, Rico. Because
both sides of the coin.
Black men, who the hell wants to be in a relationship with Black men and they don't even want to get married?
But that's why we have to be careful about our language.
Brothers, reel it in, brothers.
I'll be back for part two.
Rico, I want to say to Rico, thanks for the support, Uncle Rico. I mean, you know, we love you anyway. Monsho and Wansha, you know, I love you guys, and I know that you guys say you're there if I need you, and so I'm definitely bringing you guys back because I think that you guys have a lot to offer, and you bring a balance that's missing in this space. I think that's very important. Shout out to everyone that have supported. Thank you guys for the cash apps. I appreciate it. Thank you for your support and just being here with me. Thank you for the increase in my subscribers. I'm almost at 200. If you guys are enjoying the content that I'm giving, please make sure you share. Ask people to subscribe to the channel as well. But I really appreciate this conversation, and I'm definitely going to have a part 2 somewhere in the new year. So somewhere in January, you guys get ready, Mwamsha, please. And Rico, please come back. And again, until next time, guys, I love everyone. And let's just keep working to be better people and a better community. That's it.
Rico, I'm a shoot my number, bro, so we can stay in touch.
Okay, give it to Hanifa. I don't have a page. I'm just a YouTube groupie.
No, I'm talking about my phone number.
Oh, yeah. I'll send it to Hanifa, and then
I'll connect you guys.
Because I definitely want to talk to you some more.
I'm going to connect you guys. I got you.
Okay, please do, Hanifa.
Yeah,
I'll send you my number, Hanifa, so you can send it back to him as well.
Okay, this is what it's all about. Peace, everyone, and you guys have a nice
evening.
Okay.
All right, have a great holiday.
All right,
you too.